It's the video that the internet didn't know they needed.
Two biggest villains. You were a threat in the game.
Break your trust at that point.
I'm trusting the wrong people.
Money blindness is a real thing in that situation.
They want you out. They're coming for you. There were people that got caught in the crossfire. I felt guilty.
I was speechless. I had no idea what to think.
You left me with a grenade. Behind closed doors, he's pulling strings and saying, we got to take JC out.
JC, Juan Carlito,
Karim.
what's up? Dude, what's going on?
The two biggest villains of Beast Games.
I know at this point,
United.
right? I know, what? Right? Oh my goodness. It's the video that the internet didn't know they needed.
Oh, it's going to break it again.
Oh my goodness.
It's going to break it.
So I have a tradition.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do an intro. I haven't figured out an intro for the podcast. So
I don't think you need one.
So this is the intro.
This is the intro.
This is the intro. So first time we met was episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in our short row, right?
Podiums,
And yeah, that was the first time we were trying to all figure out each other's names, and it was really hard to understand everybody's names across the way,
that, dude.
Across the way.
And I couldn't hear you.
Yeah.
Because there was so much chaos going on. And I was like, what's your name?
Yeah.
And you're like, and
Yeah.
I couldn't make it out. But then you did the whole basketball thing.
Yeah.
You're like, Karim.
Yeah.
And I was like, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And it clicked.
Yeah. Who would have, well, it would have been crazy if somebody in our row would have taken some money and we would have now, and oh my goodness, the way
We
that.
got lucky.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to say that we got lucky, right? Because we worked our role the way we needed to. We made sure that we were connected with everybody. We reiterated like, hey, there's bigger things coming, man. Why
Yeah.
just take this now? So I think we did our part. I think between
Yeah.
the two of us, we were the most vocal
Yeah, for
in
sure.
our row.
For sure.
Like
Absolutely.
keeping them in tune, right?
I remember there was a certain point where we had kind of asked everybody to sit away from the
Yes.
from the button. And now that I think about it, now retrospect that I think about it, it wouldn't have made a difference if somebody
No.
wanted to get up and touch.
They were
the
gonna
button.
get up and touch it either way.
Before anybody would have been able to do anything. But
It was who did I have? I had to my right, I had Devin Youngblood.
yes,
And then you were directly, I think, to his right.
correct. And then I had oh my goodness, what's his name? I had the young kid. His name started with an A. It was really interesting. He was right next to Nate, actually.
Oh man, I can't remember his name either. But he was our biggest challenge on that one because he was far away from everybody.
Yeah.
He was like the lone wolf, right?
Yeah. Well, from my perspective, I didn't actually think he was a challenge because we had been talking for a while. Like before that, we were already kind of neighbors, right? So we'd been talking for a while. So I think it would have been okay. Actually, yeah, crazy times.
I know.
Crazy times and how things kind of transpired, and oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was our first interaction.
That was our first interaction. Wow. How far things have come. And
I know, dude.
Yeah.
It's so nuts.
yeah, dude, it's crazy. So I want to know from your perspective, right? And I asked everybody this because I was blindsided by anybody kind of knowing what was going on in my cube, right? In the Red Cubes in episode 3. So I didn't know. When did you kind of first hear about us, and what was your first experience, or what did you think? Is my best thing. That was my best question.
Great question. You know, the cube rumor spread really quickly. It spread like wildfire.
Mhm.
You know, as soon as we got back into the city, you guys were the talk of the town.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you know that.
Now I know that.
And all we kept hearing was they played this girl. They orchestrated a fight amongst themselves to make it seem like your decision is going to break up a brotherhood.
Yeah.
There was talks about you guys speaking in your own language and conspiring against her, and that basically it was just all a plot.
Oh my goodness.
And that it was like a devious, like,
Yeah.
oh, we
Yeah.
nailed this, you know? And that's what we kept hearing.
Yeah.
Like, listen, I'm not going to mince words. The talk was that it was a very scummy thing.
Yeah.
But we weren't there.
Yeah.
So how do we know what really went down?
Oh my goodness. The way
that's-
the way telephone works is crazy.
Yeah, dude.
Dude,
You
absolutely
hear it from
crazy.
me, and then I see it, tell someone else, and by the time it gets
That's so
around to
funny.
you again, it's a completely different story.
That's so funny.
But yeah, that's what we had heard, that it was just two people against one.
Yeah.
And just breaking her down.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
but editing is a beautiful thing.
Editing is a beautiful thing.
You know,
Right.
and they made it seem like what we heard.
Yeah.
So what really went down?
Yeah. I mean, you'd have to watch my pot. No, I'm kidding. No,
if you want to know the real deal,
I know. You can go watch. We're right here. You can go watch episode. No, no. Essentially, kind of before the game really started. I mean, like we had first got into the cubes before rules were really explained and whatnot. You get in there and you kind of put 2 and 2 together of what's going to happen.
But you knew her already, though, right?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, she was part of our group of 6 at that point.
Yeah.
And Ellie was actually part of that group that ended up going off to the island with us as well. And essentially she just told us that she wasn't really gonna play a game, and one of us was gonna have to self-sacrifice for the other. And it was before any games or anything started. So at that point, it was just okay. That's the game you want to play. That's the game you want to play.
So that's the way you guys
and
started.
At that point, we're not gonna do anything that we're not going to get our arm twisted behind our back, and we're just, if you want to be stubborn, cool, we'll be stubborn. And if that means we all go home, we all go home.
Yeah.
Or we can play a game. And then my brother did what my brother did, and then we pivoted and we worked from there.
So was Hazem's decision to not participate part of the plan?
Absolutely
not. Or did he blindside you as well?
He blindsided me. My reaction, that was my genuine reaction. So they went at each other.
Yeah.
That was it. That was the moment right there. I mean, there was a continuation. You saw it on the episode, but there was a continuation where I kept yelling at him and being pissed off at him and yelling at him in Arabic.
Yeah.
That was really the only time we spoke in Arabic. And there was a continuation, and I was not very happy because I just spent 2 hours trying to convince Maddie to play a game, and at the end of the day, I got lucky and I drew a higher card than her, and we moved on. So
because you were still at risk.
Absolutely.
At that point.
Absolutely.
Even though like the narrative was twisted, right? Hey, you have a 50% chance, right? Like I would have taken a 33 point.
that was on purpose.
Yeah.
That was on purpose. She said that she was a statistics major in college, or she worked with numbers.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I was just like, let me see if I can twist these numbers and see if I can make them work. And just see if I make them work. I talked to her afterwards, and she was just like, yeah, it was kind of sketchy throughout, but it was just so much was going on that I just wasn't thinking about the numbers. But to us, it was, at that point, we had a 33% chance of both of us moving on, and then we turned it into a 50% chance.
Absolutely,
of both of us moving
it's
on.
more in your favor.
And she dropped her chance from 66 to 50%.
And I think that's what the audience doesn't realize, that you still put yourself at risk. It could have gone either way.
Yes, absolutely.
And you would have been home.
Absolutely. It would have been a complete. I mean, it's crazy. It's honestly just crazy to think of all the different scenarios that could have happened and all the different little tweaks, that how different that top 10 could have looked like. If I mean, I think Jeff and Patrick were both on like that level in the towers where they had a redo. You know what I mean? So imagine if that would have gone that way, and it would have Jeff and Patrick, and who else would have been on that tower? But
and I think that's the moral here, right? It's like editing can paint the victim,
absolutely,
and paint the villain,
absolutely,
right? But she had choice.
Yeah,
she could have easily said,
"Yeah,
if he's not playing, I'm not playing."
Yeah.
And then that's it, right? You're at a standstill. Either all three are going home,
and then
or someone buckles and says,
"Exactly,
okay, I'm out."
Exactly, and that's the risk that she was betting on. That one of us was going to say. Then at the end of the day, she said, "Well, no, I don't think one of them is going to say that. I'm going to actually play a game."
And at the end of the day, you guys played a fair game,
absolutely,
to decide,
absolutely,
who's going to go home,
absolutely. And even if here's the crazy thing, even if we didn't play a fair game, it's still a fair game because that's part of the game.
Yeah.
That's literally the game that we're playing. You decide what's fair and what's not fair. Mm-hmm. It's kind of crazy.
100%.
So I look back in retrospect of the whole season. There was a lot of camaraderie amongst us in general, especially at the point where we all went off to the island and had like that 3-day vacation. I think the trip there, the space time on the island, the trip back, I think that just brought the whole group together, right?
Yeah.
And I think anybody that's kind of outside of that group doesn't really get that camaraderie.
They don't have that same bond.
Which is true camaraderie, you know what I mean? But I think it's really fun to theorize, but I think season 2 is going to be completely different.
Oh, dude.
I think it's just going to be cutthroat from the beginning.
Oh, yes. 100%.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm so excited for it.
Because, but that's credited to us, right? Listen, they can love to hate us, hate to love us.
It's good
because of the way that we played the game. I think it's going to change the perspective on people going into that season 2.
Yeah.
They're going to take and they're not going to give an F.
Yeah.
They're going to say, "Hey, this is money guaranteed.
Yeah.
I'm out."
Yeah.
It's going to be totally
I'm so excited.
cutthroat.
I'm so excited. But anyways, enough about me. I'm here to interview you. Okay, so you made it pretty far. You made it to what episode? It's episode 9, right?
Yeah.
Episode 9, right? And then you had a choice in episode 9, right? You came out, or episode 8, whatever it is.
8,
Episode 8. You came out of your room, right? You're number 3. So Twana had taken 100. Mike had taken 233 or 223, whatever the amount was, right? So all the information is you come out and there's more than $300,000 taken, right?
Yeah.
You sit there, you look at it, you realize that somebody took more of the money, and then the plan is out the window, right? You set a number in your head, you take the number in your head. Cool, great. A lot of people are like, well, I wouldn't do that. A lot of people are like, yeah, well, I would do that.
Yeah.
Dude, at the end of the day, your decision is your decision, right? What I want to know is what your thought process was afterwards. After you made that decision and you're like, cool, it's done, cut. What was going on in your head?
I felt guilty.
Yeah. Why so?
Because there's other good people that I took from.
Yeah.
There were people that got caught in the crossfire. They became casualties of war, whatever you want to call it. And that hurt my heart. The audience will look at it and say he didn't care, he was selfish, and so on and so forth. That's not the case. That's not the case. I was very conflicted with my decision, but I knew that it was the right decision I need to make at that moment.
Yeah.
What they don't know is the backstory that led to that. Interestingly enough, Karim, I had an interview just before, while the family was still there, while family and friends were still there. And I remember the producer asking me, how do you think you made it this far? Like, what was your strategy? And I said, I didn't have a strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I just played fair.
Mm-hmm.
I was honest.
Mm-hmm.
I played with integrity. And that was 100% facts.
Yeah.
Up until that episode. I trust people until you give me a reason not to trust you.
Mm-hmm.
Once you give me a reason not to trust you, we're done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my problem. Looking back.
Sounds like something had happened to kind of break your trust at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So family leaves, and literally 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. We have no sense of time. You know that. There's no clocks. No one's telling us what time it is. Just before that challenge starts, Tawana comes up to me and says, "You're trusting the wrong people." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she says, and she starts calling them out. Patrick, Jeff, and Gage, they want you out. They're coming for you.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, when I heard that,
yeah,
like my heart just,
because you were in an alliance with them at that point.
Thick as thieves.
Yeah.
We were tight.
Yeah.
Like, bullshit.
Yeah.
Why are you telling me lies?
Yeah.
And literally just before we were about to start the challenge, like they're like, all right, we're going right into the next game, and I'm heading to the bathroom because every time a challenge was about to start, I needed to pee.
Yeah.
It was just like that.
Yeah. It's the nerves.
Yeah. And she drops that on me, and I'm trying to get more information from her. And one of the other players starts walking to our direction, and she gets, I guess, a little like spooked, and she breaks away. And I'm like, wow, you left me with a grenade, literally.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do with this?
Mm-hmm.
Do I hold on to it? Do I pull the pin? Do I throw it? Like, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And fast forward, the game is about to start. The rules are we cannot talk to each other. So I have no time to like go up to Patrick, go up to Jeff, go up to Gage and be like, hey, I heard something that's a little concerning. No time.
So you just went off that information that Tawana gave you.
Yeah. So that information, I had it close to my chest. And I was like, why would she tell me this? Is she lying? But if she is, what does she gain from that? right? All of these things are going through my mind. And what the audience doesn't know is that we're in our dorms, in our houses for a very long time. I mean, we're talking about hours. You're there, you're lost in your thoughts. And I remember just thinking about it. And then it hit me. And I was like, she's not lying. She's telling me the truth. And the reason I knew that she was telling me the truth 100% is because earlier that afternoon, like if we could like and rewind the tape, earlier that afternoon, I walked over to Patrick's house, his dorm. That was the party house. And it was drizzling. I had my umbrella. And I remember just shaking my umbrella. And for some odd reason, Karim, I knocked on their door. And I had never done that. Right? I had never we just let ourselves in, right? It's public space for everybody. And I knocked on that door. And I remember before I knocked, I can hear people talking. I can hear conversations. So I know they were in there. And my instinct was knock. I knock. Silence. Like pin drop. And I was like, that's weird, right? Because what do you expect? If someone knocks on your door right now,
come in.
And the door's open, hey, come in, it's open. We're here.
Yeah.
Didn't hear anything. And I knock again. And then all of a sudden I hear just scattering. So I'm like, either someone's doing something in there that they're not supposed to do, which I highly doubt because there were cameras. They had a camera above the bed, a camera on this side. I mean, we were being videotaped every single minute of the day. And I said, I'm just going to open and walk in. And I open and I walk in and I see Tawana running out the back door. So if you remember the setup, you have your front door, which is just a typical door. And in the back, it was kind of like a barn door slide thing. And I see Tawana just slide and run out. And I walk in, and the very first thing out of my mind is, what was that about? It was weird. And the guys are sitting there, and they're just all talking over each other. Pale, like they saw a ghost. And none of it is making sense to me, what they're saying. And then Patrick takes the lead on the conversation. And he's like, she just got spooked. Sit down, let's talk strategy. Because that's what he does. Right? He breaks the tension. He shifts the conversation. And I didn't make any sense of it at that moment. It felt odd. But when I was sitting in my dorm, that's when it all connected. I was like, what I experienced at that moment and what Tawana had told me, it was at that time.
Yeah,
that's when they were conspiring against me.
So based off that information, you decided to trust what Tawana said, and basically at that point in your head, it was you were being conspired against, and it was you got to take care of you, you got to take care of your family at that
100%.
point. 100%. Yeah.
So up until that point, I felt very safe in the city.
Yeah.
I literally felt like, how lucky am I that I am here, Final 10, with 9 of the best people out of 2,000 that have my back, that are going to play honest, so on and so forth, right? So I felt so safe. And it was up until that point where I was like, shit, man, I'm trusting the wrong people. One moment, Patrick is like, oh, yes, we're good. And we're going to get to the end and we're going to work together and da-da-da-da. And behind closed doors, he's pulling strings and saying, hey, we got to take JC out. He's a threat. And the reason I think is because I was very well connected with everybody at that point. Very well connected. And I think they feared that if it came down to some type of voting challenge, that I would be a sure shot in.
Yeah.
And it eliminates one of them.
Yeah.
Right. So it is what it is. At the end of the day, if Patrick wouldn't have started that whole chain of events, I wouldn't have the money that I have.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have to say thank you. But at the same token, if he had not done that, then it would have been fair game.
Yeah.
There's no reason for me to have taken that much.
Yeah.
I would have taken my quote unquote fair share.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I get that. I hear that makes sense. I remember watching that episode, right? At that point, I had no idea what was going on, right?
Yeah.
So after I got out, I kind of knew what was going to happen in episode 7, just through the rumor mill and whatnot. But at episode 8 and onwards, I had no idea what was going on, right? So I see that happen, and I was just like,
what was your initial reaction?
What the
JC, right?
What the I was, yeah, I was speechless. I had no idea what to think, and I was just
like JC wouldn't do that.
No, it was so different. It was so odd. It was so different from what you normally do. And then there was this shot, and I think it's probably the best shot in the entire show, of you sitting on your bed and there's just piles of money around you.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that gave me chills when I saw that. Not just for what it portrayed, just the cinematics of it. First and foremost, the cinematics of it. Like you said you felt guilt at that point, and it showed. It showed that you felt guilt. And in my head, I was just like, I'm so confused. You know what I mean? I want to know what he's thinking.
I was very confused.
Yeah, like, and it showed very much, because you made this decision, and to take care of yourself and take care of your family. And it's, some people may say it's a good decision, some people may say it's a bad decision, right? That's up to their choice, whatever they want to think. But you made this decision, and now you're conflicted inside.
Yeah.
With that decision. And then at that point, moving forward, it just felt like it was a turn. It was just, I saw a different JC. Like, I remember the next thing, you basically brought everybody into that magenta house, and you were like, there is this alliance between Patrick, Gage, and Jeff, and myself, and blah, 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 right? And you basically just like,
get there?
Yeah. And I was just like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
That was insane to me. Like, you said you felt guilt. You said you felt conflicted. What led you to make that decision to kind of
That's a great
turn
question.
on your alliance?
And I can say, you knew me by then, right?
Yeah.
You know who I was. You know the person I am and my character and so on and so forth. And what you see on TV is the polar opposite of that, right? It's like, this is not the JC I met.
Different. It's completely different person.
Yeah. So you watching it at home is probably like, whoa, hold on a second. We never expected that, right? Going back to that shot, I sat there in front of all this money.
Well, I have a question. Did you know that there was a camera there?
So there was one camera person in the room with me.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was white on rice. He was just on me the whole time. It was like, I don't know what to do. And I felt very confused.
Yeah.
I felt very confused. They brought in all this money. I'm in this room by myself, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't talk to you or anything. They're just following you around. And I just remember, feeling a lot of emotion, right? I remember feeling like, oh my God, I can help my family. Like, I did this for us, and we're going to be in a better place. And then that same feeling of like, shit, I just screwed other people that shouldn't have been screwed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just, there's no right or wrong, right? And, as you said, some people would agree and some people won't. And it's an even split. Some people agree with me and they say, hey, you put your family first. And I would put my family first in a heartbeat. These are friends. Some will call them strangers. I don't call them strangers because we spent enough time to be able to call them friends.
When you're spending 24/7 with a group of people, and you've probably spent the last 4 weeks with this group of people, and I mean, in the show, it feels like the whole show is like a week, but no, it's like, in reality, the first 2 episodes were a week, just because of production and how long it takes, right? So you've spent 4 weeks with these people. They've become your family. They really have become your family, and
they're a substitute family.
Correct.
And I say that because you know that you don't have your loved ones there with you as much as you would love to have them with you.
They're your family in this specific situation.
They fill that void.
Yeah.
Right? And they become your family.
Yeah.
That's why you hear me say, Emma, you're like the daughter I never had. Like, it becomes your family at that point. So fast forward, next morning. So that night I didn't sleep.
I would have guessed.
Yeah, I didn't sleep. And
you didn't want to cuddle a bag of money?
No, dude. Oh, and that money smelled so bad.
I bet.
It smelled so bad. Like it was just nasty. But yeah, that night I didn't sleep. It was just, rewinding what just happened. Is this real? Because you feel like you're in a skewed reality.
I don't know who came up with this word, but I knew it went around. But money blindness is a real thing in that situation.
Oh, yeah.
When you're in that environment, money doesn't mean what it normally means.
No.
Like, I remember the first time I realized it is when the 4 captains refused the $1 million bribe. And then thinking about it afterwards, I was just like, they refused $1 million. When in reality, I was just like, oh, thank goodness they didn't take it. We moved on. Oh, that's crazy that Jimmy thought they would have taken the money, but they didn't. But then it just didn't hit like the magnitude of the money until after I got out of that environment. I was just like, and I watched it, play back for the first time. Obviously, we knew what happened, but I was just like, they refused $1 million.
And you're spot on when you say that. It's almost like $1 million didn't have the same value to us,
which is crazy to say
in that environment.
Yeah,
it's like, oh no, that's $1 million. No,
we're looking for 5
because there's 5 waiting for me.
Yeah, it kind of sets 5 million as the base, right? And everything else you compare it to 5 million, rather than like in your regular life, you compare the money, compared to what you're used to, right? And whether that's, let's say a person makes $100,000 a year, right? You're comparing everything that's there, right? So you take 650. That's 6.5 times
your annual salary.
Your annual salary. Yeah. That's 6.5 years that you're gaining. I mean, taxes, everything, blah blah blah. Right, but that's 6.5 years.
Yeah, your base.
That you're basically gaining in an instant. When in the show, it's it's only like 1/10 of the grand prize.
I know.
Yeah. So it's
like, how did we get there?
Wild.
And I think it has to do with the fact that it was in our face the whole time. They had $5 million in a case. In a plexiglass case that you stared at every morning, afternoon, evening.
Yeah.
It was always there. It was like the carrot over your head that's dangling.
And I think the Beast team did a fantastic job with this, because their goal was literally not only to be the spectacle of this is the largest grand prize in entertainment history, but at this point, and I think people are already going to start noticing it, and I noticed it with myself, that it's like, I'll watch Survivor. Oh, they're only competing for $1 million. Yeah. I know. And it's just like, I find myself thinking that, and I'm just like,
that's life-changing money.
Crazy, because $1 million is life-changing money. But I think that was the whole goal, and I think the Beast team was very, very successful in that, because now, if you don't step up your game, everybody's gonna be like,
well, and that's the psychological twist and aspect of this game. Like when you look at the 4 captains, right up there, $1 million, you stay in the game, you eliminate
60, 80 people.
A large percentage of the competition.
So here's my question for you, and I've been asking this question a couple times, and I find it very, very interesting. I'm going to ask it to you twice in 2 different scenarios. Do you feel like them, the 4 captains not taking the $1 million bribe and getting 60 to 80 people out was in the spirit of the game?
That's a great question. I'm torn. Here's why. Your word is your word. And when you give someone your word, it's a whole different, environment, right? If I don't agree to something, then I can make whatever decision I want.
Yeah.
But if I agree to something and I'm true to my word, then I'm going to stay to that.
Yeah.
Like example, going back to my episode, if we had time to talk, if we were able to speak to each other, 100%, we would have all said, everybody take 100,000. We split it evenly.
Yeah.
And I would have given my word. And even knowing what I knew, if I would have given my word, I stick to it.
So basically, it was an unspoken agreement, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So with the captains, I think,
and that's with like the top 10 at that point, like, right, the $1 million bribe, it was unspoken that it was 100,000.
it was never agreed upon. You know, we didn't even know what the rules of the game were going to be. You know, they immediately said, you can't talk to each other. That's it. And then they reveal what the game is going to be and what the rules are and so on and so forth. So no one had conversations. Let's do this, let's do that. No, it was never spoken of. The mindset is there's 10 of us, there's $1 million, let's split 100,000 and everybody gets a fair share, right? That's the mentality of it. But again, you have to be in someone's shoes to be able to understand that no longer works for me. That's not my place where I'm at right now, right? It is for you because no one is coming for you, but it's not for me. But yeah, going back to the captains, I understand why they did what they did and why they stood their ground, because you gave your word, right? And at the end of the day.
Now, I want to play devil's advocate in this situation, right? Now, I wasn't in their situation, so I can't say that I would have made a different decision or made the same decision, but purely just to play devil's advocate, right?
Yeah.
The entire point of the game is for one winner, right?
It's a competition.
So again, I'm just speaking in the spirit of the game. Don't you think if you have an opportunity to take out a quarter of the people left in the game and you don't take it, that's against the spirit of the game? Again, just to play devil's advocate.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think if I would have been up there.
Yeah.
At that stage, because we're literally just fresh in the city.
Yeah. Or maybe a weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At that stage, if I was up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
100. Give me $1 million.
What would have been the number? When would you have hit? Because obviously it didn't get to $1 million at the very, very end.
I would have waited to the end.
Okay.
I would have waited to the end.
Yeah.
And sure as shit.
Yeah.
Boom.
Once it stopped at $1 million.
Give me my $1 million.
Yeah.
You're gonna hate me. But you'll get, you know.
Would you have kept playing, or would you have been like, I'm good. Okay, cool.
But you're still in the game.
Yeah.
And yes, you have a target on your back and people are going to come for you.
Yeah.
You know, but it all depends on how you play the game at that point. It's like, hey, I just eliminated
a quarter of the people in your
competition.
A quarter
of the people that you need to compete against. So depending on how you strategize that decision, it's up to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But going back to my decision the morning after episode 9, why did I have this session, right, with everybody?
Yeah.
So episode 9 starts and it's the morning of the next morning. And they gave you such a watered down version of episode 8. Oh my God. I had people in my face.
I can imagine.
And I won't name names because it's not necessary for me to call them out, because it'll paint a different picture. And I completely understand that they were acting on emotion, what they felt at the moment, right? So not for me to say, but I literally had people like, what the f***? What about us? Like, it was just, and I kept my composure. It is what it is.
Just a verbal altercation.
Yeah. You have all right to feel that way. I understand, because at that point, nobody knew what I knew except for Tawana. So
did she ever talk to you about it afterwards?
No. Well, something that they didn't show in episode 9 is she steps up, and I'll get to that. But at that moment, it just didn't feel like the right space to say, this is why I did it. Like, even though I wanted to yell it from the rooftops, it just didn't feel right. I was being attacked. And I don't know about you, right? You have flight and fight. Those are your 2 modes. What do you choose if you're being attacked? Do you fight or do you flight? Depends
on the situation.
Right?
If you feel like, personally
if you're
speaking,
in danger,
personally speaking, if you feel like you can win, then fight. But if not,
Yeah.
fight. And I can relate to what you're saying, right? Because I don't like to regret decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But thinking about it, hindsight being 2020, and a lesson that I had learned from the whole experience is, I wish I would have been trying to get ahead of the situation that happened in episode 3 in
Yeah.
the Red Cubes, because I feel like, talking to a lot of people now afterwards and just explaining it, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
But had you done it then,
Had I had done it then, maybe it would have been a completely different ordeal. But the problem is, I just let
you would have won over a bigger audience,
Yeah, I think so.
game-wise.
I think so. I think me getting ahead of it would have been a completely different ordeal rather than just being not in control over the narrative.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that I learned, and I think that's what you're feeling
let the
is
rumor live.
correct. If we would have controlled the narrative, it would have been a different ordeal. And the same thing for you. That's what you're trying to say. If you would have controlled the narrative.
Yeah. And at that moment, it just wasn't the right time. My upbringing has always been fight. It's never been back down, just concede. That's all I know. That's how I've been wired.
Yeah.
So I fought and I stood my ground and I said, this is why, and I didn't reveal the real reason because it just didn't feel like it was the right place. So I figured the next morning I'll do that. And next morning comes up. Dude, when I tell you, it felt like...
How'd you get everybody into that room? Did you just tell people, hey, we're having a meeting, or?
I spoke to production.
Okay.
Because I was invisible. People that I had breakfast, lunch, dinner with, people that I shared intimate stories with, no longer existed. Karim, they would literally walk right past me, no eye contact. I didn't exist. I was shunned.
Wow.
I sat on the steps of my house. And they all gathered around the table, ha, 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 laughing and talking. And I didn't exist. I've never felt like that in my life. Never felt that sense of isolation. And I knew, okay, I can approach everybody one-on-one and talk to them. But by the time it gets to the third person, fourth person, fifth person, it's a different story. So I was like, I have to get everybody in one room, and I have to tell them what I know, and I have to share what I'm feeling, So what they showed you in episode 9 is such a watered down version of what happened. I mean, we were in there for a while. And I think my part of the dialogue was probably about 15 minutes straight. And I remember saying at the very beginning of that conversation was, I have never felt so attacked in my life, because that's how I felt. And this was just me like putting my guard up and saying, you need to hear me out, right? So I spoke to production and I said, hey, is it possible for us to get the magenta room, right? None of us were ever allowed in the magenta room except for the people that won the potato sack challenge. So they're like, why do you need that? I was like, because that's the only place that we can all get together in. Because they wouldn't allow anybody in anybody else's dorms at that point, because we all had money in our dorms. We had, our duffel bags. Well, I had duffel bags. I'm sorry. I had a lot of duffel bags.
You did have it all.
Some people just had like little stacks. But
you ever think about like using them as like Legos or something?
Put a fort around.
I mean, when would you ever have that much just cash just laying around?
I know.
Yeah. Make a fort out of it. Make a little. What's it called? What's the chairs that kings sit on? A throne. Make a throne of cash.
Oh my God. Cool. Yeah, so we had to lock our rooms at that point. Yeah. They wouldn't allow anybody in. So that was the only place that we can all get together. So I spoke to production. I was like, hey, can we get that? And they made some calls and they're like, yeah, let's do it. So we got in the room and I didn't have an objective at that point. I was just like, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? Like, this was not pre-planned, I
didn't actually think they were going to get everybody there.
Yeah, and everybody showed up.
Yeah.
And it was out of body for me. It was just like, and you. And like, I don't even know what I was saying, what I was thinking at the moment. But I remember going in there thinking, okay, I'm going to lay it all out, right? I'm going to make sense of why I did what I did, because they don't know. Because even the Alliance did not know that I was aware they were coming for me. You know, because there's a scene before that where Jeff is like, and you did a shitty thing too, and da 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 da. And I wanted in that moment to be like, really? I did one? You know, what about that moment that you had with Tawana? Like, I wanted that to be, you know, but it wasn't the right space for it. So we got all in the room, and I just remember saying, hey, and this is what's going on. And I was part of an alliance, and this is the plan. And I wanted to reveal them. And people will say, hey, you snitched. And snitches get stitches, right? You snitched. That's a horrible thing to do. The reason I did that was because there were really good people in the game still. And I was blindsided. I trusted the wrong people, man. I trusted all of them, but I trusted the most the wrong people. And my perspective at that point was guard up. Because if they did it to me, they're going to do it to you as well. So guard up. Because I already knew at that point, if there was any voting games where you have to kind of, you know, collaborate and say, we want this person in, out. I said, I already have 2 feet out the door. I knew it. So might as well just plant my seeds and let them know, hey, if they did it to me, they're going to do it to you too. So guard up and prepare yourself, because they're not who you think they are, right? That was my first thought process in that moment. And then my second thought process was, okay, the alliance is made up of 3, right? I'm 1, so that's 4. There's 10 of us. There's 6 remaining players. Maybe, and this is the Hail Mary shot, maybe by me coming clean and saying this is what's going on, I now have 6 other potential people that will understand, hey, I get it. And maybe I kind of buy them back in to my world. So it was a shot in the dark, but
it was a strategy.
You have to think quick.
It's an attempt, yeah. It's an attempt, and it...
You know, strategy, right? You have to think about, what do I do to stay in this game? And it's either I'm going to have 9 people completely against me, coming for me, or the potential of having 6 that can somewhat understand where I'm coming from. And maybe I still have a little bit of leverage.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's next for JC?
So in my initial interviews, you know, the question was, what would you do if you won the grand prize, right? Which we thought at that point was $5 million. And my answer to that was, I would help out in the fertility space, right? Because the reason we went mostly into debt was because IVF and surrogacy is expensive for people like me, right? So that's a space that I wanted to dive into and help a little bit more. So I would say, what's in my future now? I don't know what my jersey is worth, but I would love to auction off my jersey and try to secure enough to be able to at least grant one family like mine the opportunity to fulfill their dreams of starting a family pro bono.
Yeah.
I would love that.
That would be awesome.
I would love that, to just be able to give back and say, hey, you don't have to do what we did. You don't have to cash out your 401ks and blow through your savings and take out loans. I got you. I would love that. So it's a thought that I have in my mind, and I want to make it happen. I just don't know how to go about that, but I would love that. I would love to just donate that.
But yeah, maybe we'll find a Mr. Beast super fan, and they'll that'd like to help out in that.
I don't know what
with
it's
you on
worth,
that,
but at minimum, I need to secure $150,000. Minimum.
So at minimum, it's worth 150.
Minimum, we have to start the bid at 150. And I know people are gonna watch this and say, "Well, why don't you just give up 150 of the money you made?"
Yeah.
I have to pay taxes on that, and I still don't have enough to pay off all my debt. You know, that's the purpose of me winning that money. It's to have a fresh start, right? So that I'm not in that same situation.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, who knows? Maybe it'll happen. I would love for that to happen. I would love to know that I gave another family the opportunity to fulfill their dreams. And that's the only way I know how. So
always an absolute pleasure talking with you.
Dude.
Always so much fun.
You know, I got a lot of love for you.
Of course. Absolute pleasure.
You know, I shared this with you personally when you got eliminated, and I'm very transparent. I was happy.
Yeah.
I was happy because you were a threat.
Yeah.
You were a threat in the game.
Yeah.
You know, when I look back, there were 5 of you.
Yeah.
It was you and your brother, right? You're going to do everything together. You had Z, who was your right-hand man, right? You had Ellie, and you had oh my God, his
Nate.
Nate.
Yeah.
You guys were thick as thieves, man. And it was 5.
Yeah.
So if there was anything that had to do with like voting and stuff like that, that's a 5 against 1 vote.
Yeah.
And then you had your secret language.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, they could conspire against us and I know. No, but you guys were a threat from the beginning. You're sharp. You're quick wit. You like think on a second and come up with a plan. You had Z muscle. Like you just had a power team, man. And I was like, you guys are a threat. Yeah. So unfortunately, yes, I was happy when you got eliminated because I was
in
like,
the spirit of the game, I guess.
Yeah, I was like, we're getting rid of a threat here. But no, it's always great meeting with you, man.
Yeah.
You know, we're family for life.
Always a pleasure.
We're family for life.
Let's go eat.